You're listening to the Mama Podcast, where we bring honest conversations, expert insights, and real support to help you on your parenting journey. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by two incredible women from NCT, Sally Parkin, antenatal practitioner and tutor, and Catherine Walker, a long-time practitioner now leading service development at NCT. Let's dive deep into what NCT really offers beyond antenatal classes it's best known for. From emotional preparation for parenthood to creating inclusive, empowering spaces for all families. Whether you're expecting your first baby or adding to your growing family, this episode is packed with wisdom, warmth, and some surprising truths about modern parent support.
Well, welcome to this edition of the Mama Podcast. I'm Heidi Eldridge, your host and CEO of Mama Academy. And I'm joined here now by Sally and Catherine from NCT. So welcome for joining us, ladies. Please introduce yourself because I'm dying to hear all about you and what you do.
Thanks, Heidi. I'm Sally. So Sally Parkin. I'm an antenatal practitioner in the north of England, and I'm also a tutor with the NCT. So I joined them in 2023.
Hi, lovely to meet with you today. So I'm Catherine Walker. I work in the service development part of NCT, but I've also been an NCT practitioner. So I've worked a lot with parents, and I was really drawn to this work actually after I had my second baby, which is quite a while ago now. She was 21 this weekend, in fact. So I've been involved in NCT in some shape or capacity ever since about 2004. And I've also been a tutor, and now I work in developing services to meet parents' needs.
I think a lot of practitioners have done that, haven't they, Catherine? Like when you're pregnant or when you've got a little one, then you kind of had developed that interest. But yeah, it was certainly after the birth of my first baby that I started training.
Well, it seems like a natural progression, doesn't it? Because once you've been through it yourself, you then want to give back and support other parents, which I think is just fantastic. So tell us a bit more about NCT and what would you like parents to know specifically about the organisation itself?
Yeah, great question. So often NCT is associated only with antenatal classes, but what I'd love parents to know is that actually we're a parenting charity and that we offer much more than the antenatal classes. We've got so many free to access services. So we've got things like our website, which contains loads of evidence-based information all about pregnancy, birth and early parenthood. We've also got our infant feeding line, and that's for anybody who can contact it 365 days a year. It's open from 8 o'clock in the morning until midnight on every day of the year. We've also got all sorts of other services which can be commissioned in different areas of the country. So things like our Parents in Mind services, which really support parents and their perinatal mental health. So those are really valuable services. We've also got things like our NCT walk and talks, which again are brilliant for bringing parents together, getting outside, doing some very gentle exercise in those early days, which we know as well can really promote emotional well-being, getting outside, having that social connection with other parents as well. And then on top of that, we have things like our nearly new sales, baby cafes, bumps and babies, drop-in groups. So there's a whole kind of remit of different ways that NCT support parents. So yeah, it's pretty wide ranging. And a lot of local activities, particularly say like the bump and baby groups, are really supported by our amazing volunteering teams. So we have a huge range of people who are out and about every week, running the walk and talks, setting up nearly new sales, hosting baby cafes and so on. So yeah, huge thank you to all our volunteers. We couldn't do the things that we do without them.
Absolutely, that's amazing. It's so wonderful how so many people come together to support each other, isn't it? That's just absolutely fantastic. And I remember the nearly new sales myself.
Greg, legendary.
I used to love them. Yeah, I used to love them. I used to put the dates in my diary and off I'd go, and end up with all sorts of things that I was unable to carry back to the car.
Yeah.
They were really, really great. So I'm so pleased to hear that they're still going. That's
Oh,
fantastic.
yeah.
And the walk and talk sounds brilliant, you know, because like you say, it just gets you out into the fresh air, and you get to meet lots of different people who can support you in your parenting journey. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about the NCT courses themselves. What can parents expect?
Yeah, the courses, I'll tell you what you can't expect. You can't expect a lecture. I think sometimes parents come thinking it's going to be like that. So, you know, quite often when I speak to parents at the end, they'll be like, I thought you were just going to sit and talk at us for 3 hours. And to be honest, I think I'd probably do more talking on this podcast than I will do in a session, an NCT session. It's much more interactive. We know that people learn best when they're moving around, when they've got like the opportunity to engage with different material, but also that they're in a position where they can talk to other parents as well. And I think that really helps them feel not so alone and not so isolated. And really the course kind of puts them right at the center. So I kind of remember when I was pregnant going to midwife appointments, and time was really quite compact and pushed. And I think what parents kind of miss is having that space to really reflect on what's happening and really kind of reflecting on their own pregnancy journey, but also having the space to think about what they want in terms of birth, or what parenting might look like. And the parents that we work with are a real diverse range. Like they come to parenting from different backgrounds and different family structures. And what I'd really want like parents to know is that we're an inclusive organisation. Like we know that parenting and family looks different, and that different families have different experiences. And it's about supporting those more real life decisions, the choices that parents are making, and how that is so individual for them, where when they're kind of in this system they might get a little bit lost within that. And yeah, I guess, you know, we do we have information like to kind of springboard for those discussions, but it's really about facilitating learning, like drawing out kind of group dynamics. And that's what I really like about them, because you never really know 100% where they're going to go. So we've got a kind of framework and a structure, but every group is different. And so, you know, you end up going down little rabbit holes sometimes, which are really funny, but they're really important for that group. It's important that the content's responsive so that parents get what they need out of that.
That sounds great. So they're very personalised to the parents that are there in that group at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. But we know that there's kind of the same themes that they want to cover and that they want to talk about, but they always go in a kind of slightly different direction. And I think that's really important for parents that are birthing today, because, you know, there's complexities around kind of choices that we make as parents when we're pregnant, but throughout birth, but then kind of stepping into parenthood as well. And we're really about that kind of whole perinatal period. I think we've often been associated with antenatal education, but like we need to be honest, that's just a really small part. Like the postnatal side is forever, I think, or maybe just until they're 18, but the postnatal side is like far greater than that. So yeah, it's kind of preparing parents for life with a baby and with beyond birth.
Yeah, that's lovely, because like you say, you know, everybody's situation and circumstances are completely different, because I guess you get people coming as first time parents. This could be their first pregnancy. They might be carrying multiples, for instance. It might be their fifth pregnancy. They might be having their fifth baby, and so they're thinking, how do I navigate another one into the family life that I've already got? You might have parents that are pregnant again after a previous loss. So it's a lot to sort of work with, isn't it? And really give them sort of personalized care and answer the questions that are very, very personal to them.
Yeah, and also we have like lots of same-sex couples. We've got solo parents, blended families, like different kind of like family dynamics and setups that are not always represented in other kind of aspects of maternity or life, I guess.
So you're mentioning there that you're very inclusive and you're for every parent. So how exactly does that work within a course?
Great question. So, what I would say is that we work really hard to not make assumptions about somebody's circumstances, what their heritage could be, that we talk about birthing parents and partners as well as mums and dads, to give everybody the opportunity to hear and see themselves represented within the course. We also give space within the course to offer like the opportunity for people to see and hear diverse stories and think about different family structures and not just assume that everybody is coming from the same kind of background, basically.
Yeah. I think it's also kind of really important to acknowledge with the findings of like the Embrace report that the kind of systemic inequalities that black and brown families face, and where we sit within kind of antenatal education and preparing parents for parenthood, we've really got the ability to inform parents and make sure that the information that we give is tailored to them and their specific needs. And we can exaggerate any stereotypes and alienate parents further, and we it's really important that we don't contribute to that, and that we work really hard to make sure that we're having those very sensitive conversations, very nuanced conversations. And it might be something very simply about the images that we share or the language that we use, but it might be about kind of giving health information as well, that the APGAR score is based on white Caucasian babies, and how jaundice might present differently on brown skin to white skin. So it's about having that kind of understanding and awareness and weaving that into courses.
Oh, that is music to my ears. That's so refreshing that is included and that's within your courses. That's fabulous, because we all know the statistics, that black and brown parents are, much higher risk of poorer outcomes. And jaundice, we're very, very hot on raising awareness of jaundice, like you just mentioned. That's all on our website too, and I think the APGAR scoring is due to change. That's under review because of the very reasons that you just mentioned, Sally. So that is absolutely fantastic, and I'm really pleased that you've got all of that covered within your courses. Oh, I wish I could be a fly on the wall now.
Come, Heidi, you're more than welcome to come.
Yeah, it sounds a lot of fun. It really does. So what would be, if you could just dispel one myth about NCT courses, what would that be?
I guess that it's just for kind of one birth or one type of parent, or the kind of NCT parents or mums, and it's just kind of going on the back of that, us as an inclusive organisation, and that we're there really for all families, what however they look and whatever their pregnancy journey's been like. And I'd also want parents to know that it's more than just a social space. So I think quite often parents come because they want that tight-knit community to kind of step over this threshold with, and they want to build those connections. And of course parents do connect, and they form very deep relationships and bonds over the course of the sessions, but we're really much more than that social space. Like it's a space to kind of just kind of reflect on what the journey's like, and reflect on how they want to parent or how they envisage it being during birth or in the early weeks. I think, parents aren't short of information, but they're kind of short of that space to kind of hear their thoughts or hear what other people think on a subject.
Yeah, it's that kind of working out what it means for them in their whatever their birth circumstance is going to be. And I think I would just kind of add to that, to what Sally's just been saying, is that, yeah, it's very much not about one type of birth. We work with parents having a whole range of different types of birth, whether they know that ahead of the birth itself or whether that's something that arises during the late pregnancy or during the birth itself as well. We try to prepare parents for a whole range of experiences and try and encourage them to remain really open-minded and work out how they might respond in a particular situation as it arises.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. And I think it's interesting what you said about giving them the space to really sort of focus on that and work out how life is going to change and the dynamics, etc. Because we're so busy doing life, aren't we? Where we're running around, especially if we've got other kids as well, or we might still be going to work, and there's just lots of things that get in the way that don't give us that space to actually sit there and actually think about what's happening. So I think that's great that you do that. So if I was to come along to one of the courses, what could I expect? Talk me through a sort of everyday typical NCT class.
I do think people come in to start with and there's a little bit of kind of side eye glances and they're kind of checking out who's in the room and they're kind of tentatively, come in and sit down. And at the start, really, it's about getting to know each other. And that can be really cringy. Like, it can be really cringy and really awkward, but doing it in a way that it's fun and, with curiosity. Like, there's some small group work, there's some bigger, wider discussions. We start off kind of thinking about pregnancy and how pregnancy's been for people, and then kind of moving into thinking about what birth, options in terms of how to give birth. I think, kind of going back to what I said before, like, people aren't really short of information. Like, we have, they have lots of information at their fingertips. We're in a world probably where we're kind of overloaded with information. And for me, these courses are about having the space to find out more, that the things that you can't Google, the things that you can't ask ChatGPT, just by hearing other people voice the same kind of anxieties or concerns that you have, helps you feel more connected and less alone. I think it can be quite an overwhelming period of time. And so we cover this kind of pregnancy and birth, and then kind of moving into that early parenthood as well. So the activities, the topics that we cover are things that we know that parents really benefit from knowing, and it really helps kind of set them up for getting them to think about birth for them, and then kind of moving forwards in terms of parenting. And at the same time, we're building that supportive network as well.
Absolutely. So what are like the most common concerns that parents come to you with, and how do you help them with that?
It's really interesting because I think, quite often, like, the common concerns are things that people can fixate on when they're pregnant. So, they want to talk about parking at hospitals, or what to pack in the hospital bag, or what does it feel like? What does labour feel like? Or what might recovery look like in terms of cesarean birth? And we, of course, cover all of that. We cover that, but we also cover the kind of emotional side of things as well, like the feeling side of things. It always surprises me that you have more checks that are done when you adopt a cat than when you have a baby. Like, there are no checks that are done when you have a baby. And quite often parents are like, they're wondering, what is that first night going to be like at home when you're on your own with your little baby? That kind of sense of like overwhelm. and also I can't believe that I'm just allowed to have this little baby, and if I birthed in hospital, that I can just take this baby home, and then what, you know, what that is like. So I think, you know, we kind of cover the standard questions that parents come with, but we kind of create the space for those more feeling based, kind of projecting them into what that might feel like for them. And sometimes it's not always about what happens in the room. I think, you know, sometimes it's about creating a space so that if they've come with their birth partner or their partner, it acts as a springboard for them then to have a discussion outside of the room. So I think, you know, a lot of the conversations happen as they're traveling to and from the sessions. You know, it's an opportunity for them to kind of connect and reflect.
So very thought-provoking.
I like to think so. Yeah, I like to think so.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you're right. We do sort of concentrate and focus on all the physical side of it, all the physical changes and what to expect, and, you know, dealing with labor, etc. But you're right, we probably then don't really focus too much on the emotional side and the hormones and how we're going to feel when we bring baby home, etc. So yeah, that must is that hard to discuss with parents? How do they feel when you're talking about emotions with them, especially for, you know, birthing partners and dads?
I really quite like that bit. And I think this is really kind of the skill of the antenatal practitioner to kind of draw that out. You know, you're not going to sit in the first session and say, right, you know, how does everybody feel about that first night at home then? Like, that's not going to work. So we do it very gently and very considered, and in a way that it feels comfortable and safer. So it might be done in smaller groups, it might be done through narratives or birth stories. And I think really, like, that's the kind of exciting bit, because you know, certainly I've found in the years that I've been in practice that there's been a far greater openness talking about emotions and mental health. And I think that's just because of a lot of work that other charities are doing, as well as NCT, in terms of raising the profile of perinatal mental health. And so it becomes easier, but I think it's about creating that in a way that's at the right time in the course. And sometimes it's led by parents, and sometimes it might be led by the practitioner. But it's about knowing when, you know, when to do that, and always having something afterwards that kind of brings everybody back. And we have lots of biscuits, Heidi, I won't lie, it's lots of biscuits.
Even more reason for me to come along.
And cups of tea.
No, it all sounds brilliant. And I guess when relationships are formed as well, when the parents are meeting each other and those friendships are being developed, then it's a conversation they can have together, isn't it, as well, at another time. That's probably when those sort of emotions and feelings come out, like, so how are you really feeling about this, you know? And then they have a more of an open conversation once they've got that trust and that friendship.
And I think that helps me if I know that, like, this is what we're going to cover today, and I know that it could, you know, it could be challenging for some people. That's what kind of makes me feel how important it is, because I think if they're sharing that, and if they're talking about that antenatally, whether it's in, you know, a group just with people who are pregnant, or whether it's with birth partners, if they've voiced those concerns antenatally, I think it's much easier for them to say postnatally, do you know what, does anybody else found that they feel like this? You know, they're much more able to have those conversations. And I know that. I know when I meet parents afterwards, you know, quite often they're quite open about talking about their mental health. You know, after their babies have been born, you know, being part of those conversations. And I do think there's a change for the better in not acknowledging that this can be a massive shift for people.
Definitely, like you say, there's so much more awareness now that people tend to be a little bit more comfortable about talking about things like that, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are the other topics that the NCT course covers? What sort of things could you expect to learn about?
What do we do? So we always do practical baby care. I think people want to know about how to handle and hold babies and change nappies, and yeah, Yeah, it's interesting because I always think people learn that really quickly on the job because you're doing so much, so many nappy changes to start with. But I think there's something about going through that process antenatally that gives parents confidence. And so I always have these dolls and I kind of hand them out, and everybody's a little bit kind of awkward kind of passing them around, and I just say, I want you to keep them with you. I don't want you to put them to bed, or I don't want them to see them sat up on their own. I want you to kind of get used to what it's like handling and holding this baby. And by the end of this little session, I find that parents have the baby kind of over the shoulder and they're kind of swaying or rocking, or they've got the baby kind of laid on their lap, and they just kind of instinctively like nurturing this baby. And you can't teach that. You can't teach people how to comfort and settle babies. But I think when you give them the opportunity to go through the motions of changing a nappy, they instinctively like bond with this little doll and this little baby. And then you say, that's your instinct. Like that's your, that's what we're building in parents, is that kind of instinct and knowing what's right for their baby, because they're going to be the ones that know.
That's so lovely.
I was just going to add to that. Sometimes those kind of activities are just a wonderful opportunity, aren't they, to really explore, that this newborn baby might be feeding an awful lot in those early days and weeks, and how might that feel, and how might you manage that and cope with that. And parents are often quite shocked when you're doing the nappy changing, and they're like, oh, so how many times are we going to be doing this? And you're like, well, kind of at least 8 to 10 times a day. It's quite a lot in the early days. So it's kind of really beginning to build that picture about what early parenthood might look like and feel like for the parents as well, and how they're going to manage with all those additional tasks that they need to fit into their day on top of the laundry and making food for themselves and things like that. So you really begin to unpick that postnatal period and what that might look and feel like.
And they then come away with the belief that they can actually do it, because obviously then they've got a plan, because they feel a bit more prepared, and knowing that their instinct will kick in, and they'll know how to handle the baby. That must be lovely. It must be so rewarding for you as practitioners to witness that and see that developing.
Yeah, it is really lovely, kind of building that confidence. And I think that's my kind of aim for the sessions, is that parents leave feeling more confident and informed, and knowing that it might not instinctively be there right at the beginning. Like, it's okay to be a bit wobbly, but you've kind of built that support network, hopefully, that will kind of hold them through that as well.
So would you say that's sort of your main hope, that parents take that away from them from a course?
Yeah, that they're informed, that they see a lot of information out there. There's a kind of ton of information on TikToks and social media, and some of it's really good and really good quality, and some of it like isn't in line with what we'd necessarily recommend, or what the NHS would necessarily recommend. And it's helping parents to navigate that in a way that they feel informed, and that they know what's right for them and what's right for their family. That they're confident in doing that, but they're connected as well. They're connected with each other, so they can kind of reach out and support each other. And they know where the support is externally as well.
Yes, that's also very important. We signpost a lot as a charity, as you can imagine, to different organisations. So what do you think that parents enjoy the most about the courses? What's the bit that they tell you that they got the most out of?
I feel like I don't know whether you want to say anything, Catherine.
Well, you've probably hear the kind of anecdotal things that parents might tell you when you bump into them in the supermarket or at the end of the course as they're leaving. In my role, I get to see we survey parents at the end of their course, and again after they've had their babies as well. So we do have a lot of insight about what parents tell us that they find really valuable and what they've really enjoyed about the course. And it kind of reflects some of the things that Sally's already said, is that there is a lot of information out there, but what parents tell us that they really value is being able to ask the questions that are relevant to their own personal circumstances, and they have that opportunity to really kind of explore the nuance and what that means for them in their particular birth and early parenthood journey. The other thing that we hear really strongly in all the parent feedback that parents massively appreciate is feeling that their decisions are not being judged by the practitioner or the rest of the group. Everybody is going to make different decisions because everybody's circumstances are completely different, and that's okay. There's not just one way of doing things, and we work really hard to empower parents to make the decisions that do feel right for them in their circumstances, and that does chime with what we hear in the feedback. That parents really value that their course was approached in a really inclusive way, that their circumstances were represented, that their circumstances were valued, and that they were not judged in any decision making that was going on for them. So that's a really big win. And what we know that parents like. And then the other thing, again, I think, Sally's alluded to it throughout all the things that she's been saying about working with parents on the ground, is that they really, really value that social connection. But that doesn't happen by accident. It really is absolutely the skill of the facilitator that helps the parents to build those supportive networks that last kind of way beyond the lifetime of the course itself and into those early weeks of parenthood. So those are the kind of top things that we hear in the parent feedback that they've really valued.
And I always know when that's happened, because I think you spend your time like helping them build connections, and in the last session, like they might come in with those side-eye glances, and in the last session they're going to the park or they're going for a coffee, and they don't invite you. And I think that's a sign, as much as it really hurts, it's a sign that you've done your job, because they've connected as a group, and you've just faded then, it's them that go forwards.
Or they won't leave. You're trying to leave. It's the end of the session. You're packed up, jangling the keys. It's like, no, time to go. But they don't want to go because they know it's their last session and they just want to keep talking, and because they've really made that sort of social connection. Yeah, it's fab to see.
But and they know when they're all together again, their babies will be there as well. Yeah. It becomes that big. Yeah, it's lovely.
That's so nice. So do you do that for all the courses then? They all meet up afterwards with their babies?
We encourage groups to meet up, but very often they just are meeting up. They usually join a WhatsApp group or find another means of staying in touch outside of the course, and they do often arrange to meet up to keep that social connection going.
That's really nice. So what would you say that your favourite bits are of being a practitioner?
I think it is that, like, knowing that they've connected as a group, and sometimes I'll see it in the second, like in the last session, because it's really hard to start, because they'll come in and they'll start having conversations and they'll be checking in on each other, and then you're thinking, we really need to make a start now in order to move through things, but actually they're quite well bonded by that point, and they're chatting. I also really enjoy, there's always one question that absolutely that throws me, that I've never been asked before, as I've been doing the courses for 13 years now. There's always one question that I've never been asked, and usually at least one that I never know the answer to. There's probably one of my favorite ones was whether birth was the same on the moon as if on Earth. And I don't know the answer to that question.
Great question. So they're giving you homework then, as well as you give them homework.
Absolutely.
I had a similar gravity related one, which was, do babies know, because often babies turn head down towards the end of pregnancy, do babies know that they're upside down? I was like, I don't know.
Don't know.
Can't really ask them, can we?
Don't ask them, do we? Yeah. And I really like trying to explain the same thing but in different ways. So I think if you would have come on my course like 13 years ago, it would have been completely different to how I do it now. And I think, that's a really good thing about kind of the practitioners that we've got, is that they're really creative. Like, they're thinking about how to explain things in different ways so that it really lands with parents and it stays with them kind of moving forwards.
Yeah, that's really important. And like you say, really, really creative, really skillful, because people learn things and take in information in completely different ways, don't they? Some are very sort of verbal, some are visual. So that's great that that's all going on. I've learned so much today. Thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. We now know all about NCT courses, and yes, I'd love to come along to one of them at some point and see what happens, because it sounds like a lot of fun. Sounds like I'm missing out.
You'd be very welcome, Heidi. You can come to Yorkshire.
And I think fun does actually sum it up. We do have a lot of fun on our courses as well, whilst acknowledging that we do cover some very serious topics. There is a lot of fun as well.
Sounds brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining me. If parents want to find out any more information, they can obviously visit the NCT website, and NCT have very kindly put together your very own webpage on our Mama Academy website as well. So there's lots of information on there too. And if people want to get in touch with you, do they just contact you via the website?
Yes, via the website, we've got an inquiries email address, or there's a live web chat if they've got any quick queries as well. So yeah, that's the best way to contact us. Head to the website.
Wonderful, very helpful. Well, thank you so much, Sally and Catherine, for joining us today, and I wish you all the best.
Thank
you.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode, share it with a friend or colleague. Make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on our next episode. If you'd like to support our work by fundraising or volunteering, please email contact@mamaacademy.org.uk. For more information on pregnancy and maternity services, please visit our website at www.mamaacademy.org.uk. We're also on all of your favourite social media channels. See you next time!